My name is Josh King. Today I will be showing you how to do Warlord on untap.in. And this is Oliver, and he will be showing you how to play with Play-Doh. Alright, so when you get into Untap, you're going to head straight over to this Decks tab if you're playing for the first time, and you're going to create your deck. I have a bunch of decks built, as you can see. But to create a deck, you simply hit the Create Deck button. You give it a name, and you select Warlord and Create Deck. When you're in here creating a deck, you can search for whatever cards you want to add to your deck, to add them manually. When you hit add to add them, it's going to do 3 at a time by default. You can plus, minus, whatever you're going to do, and remove. You can also, if you hover over, so I'll go back to that real quick. If you hover over, you can see what they are. You can do it here as well. But the easier way probably to do decks for this, especially if you don't want to pay for their Patreon, it's only $5 a month. It's totally worth it. If you're going to have a lot of decks, build a lot of decks, it's not a lot of money. It's a great program we're using a lot, so might as well support them. But if you don't want to pay for it, you can store your decks in like a Word document or Excel or whatever you want to do. And you can paste from text. So I have a deck list prepped already, and you can do 3. You can do like, I'll write like 3 times. A lot of times in my stuff, it takes it either way. The main deck, like the part of your deck that's your deck, not your starting army, you'll put under deck, and you can put your starting army under play, and import the cards. And then it just builds your deck for you, and you have your whole deck. I would double check your deck, because sometimes, like if you spell something wrong, it's going to tell you like 47 out of, or 47 cards instead of, and then 20 is the number of unique cards, so 50 total cards, 20 unique cards, if you want to know. I mean, that's about it as far as building your deck. You can also export your deck, which is this download deck, and it will let you download it as a text file, so you can save it somewhere. Because you can only have 10 decks with the free Untap built at a time, but you can go in there and delete them and then create new ones. So you can upload from a file, save to a file, etc. If you click back into a deck, you can edit it. Obviously pretty straightforward. Clear cards in deck, download the deck, paste the deck. That's really about it that you're gonna need to do or want to do most of the time, unless you want to get a little fancier. This red arrow takes you back, and then you can, now that you have a deck, play a game. If you go to the games section, you can start a new game. You call it something. Playstyle doesn't really matter. Set the number of players. For Warlord, mostly that's going to be 2. With a free account, you cannot add a password, and you can't disallow spectators. But if you pay for at least their basic level of Patreon, you can do that. So we're going to do solo so no one gets in here, and then start a game. Enter the game. We'll grab this test deck I created, and if you do it this way, it basically just like copies your every move. It's like you're gonna test a deck or whatever. Normally, of course, it would be your opponent on this side. Whoops. And you doing stuff. Now your deck is down here. you can hover over it and do things. So like if you hover over it and hover over the hand, you can draw multiple and draw a particular number. You can also just click on the hand to draw one. Honestly, it's easier to use the keys on your keyboard for this. C on the keyboard lets you draw 5 cards. Which is hitting C 5 times is faster. If you'll notice on the right, yeah, you can see, it's going to start keeping track of the things that are happening. So if you forget what someone just did, like if I tap this or spin it, then it's going to say I spent a bastion. To tap things or spin things, because we're playing Warlord, you double click on it, double click to ready it. If you need to stun it, if you hover over the card and hover over the pivot, so you gotta hover over the card, hover over the pivot, and then hover over this word pivot, and then you can do 180. And then if you double click it, it'll ready, and you can just spin it again. That's kind of the easiest thing to do. Now at the end of a turn, the easiest thing to do is to hit this like untap all, and we'll do 90 degrees for everything. To play cards, you just click and drag, put them into play. The easiest way to discard cards, if you hover over it, you can like do discard. You can also just drag it to your discard pile. But the easiest thing to do is to hover over it and hit D, which will move it to the discard pile automatically. To roll a die, if you hover over this die here and then hit the D20, it rolls a D20. Don't just hit the die, because then it rolls a D6, which is not what you want. And then this is a D10, but what you want is a D20. You can also flip a coin. If you're playing without voice in some way, shape, or form, then you're also going to want to know how to hover over and shake to say like, okay, I'm going to attack this bastion here, and it will shake. Now normally, of course, it's not going to shake mine and theirs, it will just shake theirs. You can do the same kind of thing if you want to discard a card from their hand, that sort of thing. If you want to, do something and then they're gonna, like if you want to react to someone, you can say no response if you're not going to do anything, or you can alert response if you want to do something. So if they take an action, you want to play a react, you can say alert response. If you're over voice, it doesn't really matter that much. But if you're not over voice, you're playing internationally, whatever, it can be difficult. Most of the time when I play stuff, even if it's an action card, I'll just drag it out to the board so that people can read it before I then put it in the discard pile. And I mean, honestly, that's the basics. Slightly more advanced if you need to, like if you take control of something of theirs, like if you've stolen Destiny, their card, you can't control their cards, so it's easier to like insert a token of it. So if I want to get a token of Bastion, put it into play, I can do that, and then I can control the token. And you can drag stuff over to their side of the board as well, like if you're stealth in. If you have 4th level characters, most of the time people just put them over to the side, because of course it's really rough to get 4 ranks. You can overlap cards if you want, but that gets messy. It's easier to just drag it to the side, and you can start ranks from over there. That's kind of the norm that everyone's been doing. For wounds, sorry, that's important as well. If you hover over the card and then hover over the little slashes, there's a add counter. If you left click on it, it goes up. If you right click on it, it goes down. For wounds, despite the fact that this is not how wounds work, it's usually easier to do minuses, just so that you know that they're wounds. Because counters are also the way that you add bonuses. So like if you give, like if I give this, like I react with my bastions and give everyone +1 attack, the easiest way to do that is to add a +1 like that. It's also the easiest way to mark like, oh, Drum has used his react. So I'll hover over add counter and mark him as having used his react, that sort of thing. You can also hover over and add note, and it will add a note to the card, and then you can like click on it and see it, or your opponent can hover over it and see what it says, and it'll show on the right there. But that's a little more complicated. The other thing you want to know if you're not playing with voice is target source. So if you do target source and then select something, it draws an arrow. Of course, that did it in a weird backwards way, but target source, I'll select that. So this targets that. So like if you are putting a item into play and you want to designate who it's going on, or if you're using an action card and you want to designate who it's going on, you can hover over target source and then click on something else and it will target that thing. Well, that's about it though. If you have any questions, you probably know where to find me. Let me know, or anyone's happy to help. You can always jump in a game. There's usually 1 or 2 people around looking for a game if you want, but have fun.